welcome to this webinar on ESS BIZGrants. This is Peter Towers speaking, the Managing Director of ESS BizTools. Thank you very much for your support of our products, and our aim from this webinar is to assist you to be able to better utilize this product to help you to identify government grants so that you can be of further assistance to your clients. If you have any questions that you'd like to raise during the webinar, can you please type in your question, and in webinar terminology, raise your hand and send the question through to me, and I will answer it towards the end of the webinar. So we'll get started. I've gone to ESS BIZGrants website. You all have usernames and passwords so that you can access the site. There is some general information there under the heading of members that you're able to access once you're logged in, that you can read about the process that the system enables you to undertake. This product is there to assist you in identifying the grants that your individual clients might be eligible for. So we'll go straight through to client profile if I can, and we'll look at client profiles in a moment. But before we do that, we might just look at grants. There is a list of grants in the system. If you click on the name of the grant, you can get an overview of what that grant's about. So you can just flick through the system and look at various grants or support that might be available in the system. To assist you. Now, these grants are for all types of businesses and include both Australian government and various state and territory government grants. So if you just want to look at what's in the system, what sort of grants that are there, that's an easy way just to click through and analyze the grants that are available. So we'll just go back now to the beginning and go on to client profile. Now, I've already established some client profiles, so and I've got one a little half completed. We'll just work through all these others we've been running. I've called this business Eastern Steel Fabrication Proprietary Limited. We'll just go back to the beginning. So I've inserted that company. I called it Eastern Steel Fabrication Proprietary Limited. Now, in the first decision you've then got to make, once you put the name in, oh, incidentally, on the name, if you don't want your clients' names to be appearing in the cloud, in cloud technology, you can use a reference number. That's why we've got that mention there of reference. You could use a reference number if you like to identify who that client is. Your next decision is to identify what the commercial organizational status of this client is. Now, companies are the most popular entity for government grants, but that doesn't mean that other types of entities are ineligible for all grants. So we've listed there, or what's on the screen there at present, is the type of entities, as far as we can ascertain, that apply to the small, medium enterprise communities that could be eligible for some government grants. So obviously in this particular case, we've identified that this business is a company. The next question is related, does the business export products? Now what we're trying to ascertain there is the grants, the eligibility for grants like Australia's Export Market Development Grant, but some of the state governments and territories also have export grants, so we're wanting to know whether a business exports. I've answered here yes, so that we can show you how that works. The next question is about importing of products. Now there are some benefits for importers to delay payment of customs duties and GST on imports, and also benefits for importers who are going to export an imported product within 12 months. So that's why we're asking that question, does the business import? Number of employees is very important. There are various grants, admittedly mostly in the state systems, that specify either minimum or maximum numbers of employees. And in this example we're looking at today, you'll see one of those on a Victorian grant. The next question relates to, does the business have an Australian business number? Now, ESS BIZGrants has been established for the use of small medium enterprises. So if there is no ABN, then that particular business will not be shown any potential grants. How many years have you been operating? Again, it's very important. It's important in the federal government's major grant for small business, which is Enterprise Connect, and in that it specifies that a business must have been in business and have lodged 3 annual business activity statements. In some of the state government grants around Australia, the number of years that you've been operating is also quite common. In fact, I hope the aircraft noise not disturbing you too much. We live in Townsville and there's a major air show or aircraft movement going on of RAF planes at present. My apologies for that. We get calls occasionally from subscribers saying, what grants are there for startups? To be honest, there's not many grants for startups anymore. Most of the governments are imposing a test that the business needs to be able to operate for a few years. But there is no minimum period of time to be able to successfully claim research and development expenditure, as long as a business has spent over $20,000 and is incorporated as a company and goes through the registration process with AusIndustry. There is also no minimum period for a business that's going to make a successful application to any of the Commercialisation Australia grants. So that's the skills and knowledge, experienced executives, proof of concept, and early stage commercialisation. However, for proof of concept and early stage commercialisation, I'd imagine that the business has been going for 1 or 2 years to get to the stage where they would have a demonstrable prototype and a business concept that was able to be submitted. Indeed, I know some businesses that have been operating for 6 or 7 years before they get round to applying for an early stage commercialisation grant, because the earlier period has been tied up with research and development and various trials. The system then asks you to insert the turnover. Turnover is very important because for some grants there's minimum turnovers and other grants there's maximum turnovers. And obviously we've got the differences that occurs in something like research and development incentives at the $20 million figure, where the terms of the government support change. Annual expenditure. I've just highlighted there that explanation on annual expenditure. It's only there because of Enterprise Connect. Enterprise Connect has a rather unique concept of saying that a business can qualify if it meets the monetary figure that they've specified as the minimum sales. So the legislation says minimum turnover or minimum expenditure. So if a company has spent a lot of money on doing research and development, pilot plant work, and other general expenditure, that if it's a manufacturer exceeds $1.5 million, even though they may have very little sales, as long as they've been in operation for 3 years, they could be eligible under the Enterprise Connect grants. And there's a lot of them. Enterprise Connect now supports 12 different industry groups, and those industry groups are considered to be very wide definitions of those individual groups when you look at the definitions. So Enterprise Connect can be of benefit to a large number of businesses in Australia, small businesses. And there's a fair amount of the work that's undertaken by businesses eligible for Enterprise Connect that can be undertaken by accountants, particularly accountants who are interested in getting involved in business advisory services type activities. And the sort of work that I'm talking about, just so you think about this, is business plans, market research, feasibility studies, strategic plans, but also looking at succession planning, transition within a business from the current generation to the next generation, advice on chart of accounts, advice on debtor systems, advice on human resources systems, advice on risk management strategies. Now, the ones I've just mentioned are all projects that I have undertaken under Enterprise Connect or have been involved with in some form. Another activity is mentoring of businesses. So I was involved with about half a dozen businesses where effectively I was the chairman in an unofficial capacity for a 6-month period to try to show those businesses how they can formalise the implementation of the strategies that have been established. Now, that was a trial program. I was involved in it, and 3 or 4 other consultants around Australia were involved in it, and it's now been incorporated within Enterprise Connect nationally as one of the activities that they will support. So Enterprise Connect are very flexible. So if you know of something that you believe that your client needs done, then you should make sure that a mention of that service, that activity, that work that needs to be done is brought to the attention of the Commercialisation Australia case manager, so that hopefully that person, he or she, will include it in their report as activity to be undertaken. Are you registered for GST? This is a bit like the Australian business number question. If a business is not registered for GST, it will not be shown as being eligible for a grant, because it is a precondition of all of these grants that the recipient is registered for GST. Indeed, if those of you who are not familiar with government grants, whenever a government grant is paid to a business, it is always paid at an amount plus GST. So if the grant's $20,000, the business gets an extra $2,000, which they then have to declare the income, the 20 grand, and the GST component in their business activity statement. and obviously they can claim the expenditure they then pay from that grant, as long as they've received a tax invoice from the payee. Are you tax exempt? This system has been developed. What we've put into ESS BIZGrants is only grants for small and medium enterprises. So if a business is a charity or a not-for-profit, in other words tax exempt, you will not find any grants within this system for a charity or a not-for-profit or a tax-exempt business. So if you answer yes to that question, you will find that you're not offered any grants when you go in to have a look at what grants might be available. Are you involved in research and development? We're not specifying there that it's got to be more than $20,000, and we're not specifying there it has to be expenditure by a company, because it is a trigger to our system to look at grants like Commercialisation Australia's Skills and Knowledge, which an applicant can be other than a company. However, by the time they receive funding from the government, they must have incorporated the company. So an individual can apply for Commercialisation Australia's Skills and Knowledge program, and to undertake a skills and knowledge program you need to have developed a prototype. So we believe that you would have undertaken research and development expenditure. We are currently working on our next version of ESS BIZGrants, and we're going to slightly change that question by putting in the words prototype development as well, just to make sure people don't disregard it because they know the entity is not a company, or they know they haven't spent $20,000. At this stage, if they've spent any money on research and development, we'd like you to tick yes to that, because it could show you some other grants that you may not be familiar with or may not have considered, and the client could be eligible for those. Concerns about the financial vulnerability, we're also slightly rewording this in version 2 because it caused a few questions around the countryside from some of our users. It's a question to be looked at from a government bureaucrat's point of view. In most of the grant applications now, they ask a question: is there any concerns about the financial vulnerability of a business? You need to answer it from the point of view of a government employee, and our definition of that really is you'd only answer yes if the liquidators are about to be appointed or a receiver is about to be appointed. The fact that the debtor's days outstanding are 65 days and it's causing a few problems, and even a few problems with the bank, I don't believe is sufficient justification that you would tick yes to that question, because if you answer it yes, you will not be offered any grants, because government departments won't deal with you if you answer yes to this financial vulnerability in a particular client. So we get to that stage, we've answered those questions, so we tick save. Now I've already done a little bit of work on this one. I inserted an address, so I've said this business was in Hawthorne, seen they won the AFL flag. I thought we'd give them a bit of promotion, so we've done that. The system repeats the financial details. We're probably not going to have that in version 2 because you've already put it into the system. Now we need to now go to business and industry profile. Now these are based on the Australian and New Zealand standard industrial classifications from the Australian Bureau of Statistics. You can look first of all at the businesses, and they're the businesses that you're given the opportunity to identify. But then you can look at the industry classifications, and there's 17 of those, and you can select which one applies. So I've already selected here that the business is a manufacturer and they're in the manufacturing industry. You can see there the other industry classifications. If you're unsure, we've got a direct link to the Australian Bureau of Statistics data. So you could go onto there and go through and have a look at the various classifications that the Australian Bureau of Statistics have established. Now, that's not foolproof because the AEST statistics are really only updated every time there's a census, and what we've found is the Taxation Office data is far more current, and it's what a lot of accountants obviously you're now using with tax returns and other information that's going to the tax office. So in version 2 we are going to use the tax office business list. We are going to supply it as a list, so you can go straight on there and click on the classification that applies to that client, or you can insert the index code as supplied by the tax office direct into the system, and that's helped us significantly in narrowing down the definition of grants that might apply to that particular business. So we've been fairly busy. We've gone, what some people might say, very busy. We've gone through every grant and have gone back and identified the industry codes that relate to that particular grant. So we've gone back and found the industry classifications that apply to it. And we hope that that will improve the utilisation of the system. But we're now in a position to go into search. Now, I've been playing with this one before we went onto air to get a little bit of it set up. What you get when you first go onto the site now is you get a list of pending grants. Now, this covers a large number of grants or incentives, and in fact the system identified there are 45 that could apply for this particular business. Now, if you want to read what a grant's about, you just click on the name and it will take you to grant details, where you can see a brief description of what the grant's about. If you want to look at the funding details, you can click on the funding details and it will tell you what the grants are. This is an apprentice with disabilities. If you want to have a look at a bit more information, we've introduced what we call a grant toolkit. So if you click onto that, you will receive the paper that's within ESS BizTools that summarises how the apprenticeship scheme operates. Now, we're assuming at this stage the new federal government hasn't made any changes to any of these rules. They could well be making them in the future, and we will then obviously be changing the paper and changing the grant system to record any changes that the government comes up with. We then have to answer some additional criteria. So it's asking a question: are you proposing to employ an apprentice who has a disability who undertakes certificate or two higher level? Now, this particular incentive for an apprentice with a disability is not restricted to any type of business. It's saying as long as you're employing an apprentice who's got a disability, he can be employed or she can be employed in virtually any type of business, because the business is not specified. So if we say, you then have to answer that question. We answer it yes. What the system has done, it's told us that we would then be eligible for that grant. If you wanted to, we could get further details by going onto the Australian Apprenticeship Organisation, and they would then give you details of the closest apprenticeship organisation. There's about 300 of them around Australia that you can direct your client to. If we go back to results, and we have it look at potentially eligible. I'd already put in, when I was practicing before, an adult apprentice, but now here's the apprentice with disabilities. So it's coming up in a list of potentially eligible applications. I'm going to go back to pending now. So I'm disregarding these other apprenticeship schemes, that they all work the same way, although there is a comment I should just... The mature age worker over 45 years, just so you can have in the back of your head, that applies to any type of business. But if we have a look at, say, an apprentice, skill-based apprenticeship, as long as they're going to undertake the training and certificate 2 to 4, they can be eligible for assistance if you've got clients looking at doing that. And this is the one I was trying to click on. Some of the other apprenticeships, though, the grant's only available if the skills listed in the National Skills Needs List. Now, we said that this business was a manufacturer, so if we go into the grant toolkit, we can have a look at the National Skills Need List. There it is there, so we'll just bring it up. And in the National Skills Needs List, which lists about 120 occupations, there are various occupations there that can fit into manufacturing, like fitters, fitter welders, gas fitters, metal fabricator, metal machinist. So that's the reason that particular grant is being highlighted for those sort of apprentices. So some apprenticeship grants are only available if the skill is listed in the list of a shortage area for apprentices. Now I'm just going to flick through some of these others. You can look at them. I'm just trying to pick up the Clean Technology Innovation Centre. I'm skipping over them because I'm very uncertain what the new government's going to do with those. Part of our problem in defining a business as a manufacturer is that you can get grants like the clothing and household textiles. They are also a manufacturer, but the business we got here is a steel fabricator. The ANZIC codes in their business classifications don't provide for that distinction, but in our version 2, which you should be able to start using in about 4 weeks' time, the distinction will be a lot clearer because we are linking the individual code to a particular grant. So for a steel fabricator, we wouldn't have anything to do with a household and textiles grant. But what I want to just bring up now, though, is just to explain that this grant exists, is the Continuous Improvement Grant for Manufacturing Centres. Now, the grant details say that if a business has already been through Enterprise Connect Stage 1, which is the tailored advisory service, within 12 months they can come back and apply for further support, which would give them a maximum of a further $20,000 on a 50% basis. So there's the funding details. You can read the details in the grant toolkit. We've got to go through and answer some additional criteria. Now the questions are quite simple. Has the company completed Stage 1 of the Enterprise Connect Tailored Assistance Program for Manufacturing Centres? If we say yes to that. And has the company demonstrated significant progress in addressing the elements outlined in Stage 1? So what the Enterprise Connect is looking for is that there's been some completion and action based on the original work. If we answer yes to that, the system is now saying that you are potentially eligible. If we wanted to apply now, we could go to the Enterprise Connect site. It takes a little while, but you could do that. We go back to results, and within potentially eligible, we now have that additional grant. If we go back to pending, there's just a couple of other grants that I'm really bringing to your attention because I've found that some people are unaware of them. The one I've gone to is early stage commercialisation. It's a grant run by Commercialisation Australia. This is the big one. There can be funding of up to $2 million. If you go to the Commercialisation Australia website, you'll see a list of organisations that have received these grants. There's quite a number of businesses listed in the $1 million to nearly $2 million detail. You can read the material if you wish. You can go on and do the additional questions. So you need to go through and answer those questions. Now, to get a $2 million government grant on a 50-50 basis, you've got to have obviously then a $4 million project. You'll have, that's the maximum of course, the minimum is a lot smaller, it's only $50,000, but you need to have done a fair bit of work, and the turnover then can be 50 million. So the normal Commercialisation Australia is only 10 million, but for this big grant you can have a turnover of $50 million. Now, I'm not proposing to answer any of those questions because there's another grant within Commercialisation Australia that I want to show you before we finished. Another one to keep your eye on, because there's a whole list of these here, as you can see, is the Export Market Development Grant. We said in the preamble that this business was an exporter. There's a summary of the Export Market Development Grant, funding details. If you want the grant toolkit and a list of the eligible expenditure, you can get it. Just bear in mind that if you've got any clients that undertook export sales last year, they need to have their applications lodged by the 2nd of December. Have you spent money to seek out, create demand? Let's say yes. Are you claiming overseas representative market? Have you maintained documentary evidence? They've got to do that, so we say yes. If you are claiming expenses under the marketing visiting, have you maintained full records? The guidelines show you very clearly that businesses have to maintain all the records. If they've claimed 2 previous export market development grants, they should have had a discussion with with Austrade. So we'll say they've done that. Will the business spend more than $20,000 aggregate in 2012-13? Now, that doesn't include any promotion in New Zealand, North Korea and Iran. New Zealand, because we treat them as virtually being part of Australia, North Korea and Iran for obvious reasons. But a first-time claimant can in fact claim the $20,000 expenditure over a 2-year period if they wish. So let's say, yeah, we're going to spend more than $20,000. And the business has to be the principal for the export business. So if we tick yes to that, the system is going to show us yes. Incidentally, even though I ticked all those yes, that's not appropriate in every grant. Some of them do require a no answer, and if you put in yes, it will tell you that you're not eligible. And we've now got the Export Market Development Grant in our list. I just want to click through to one in particular to just show you a Victorian government grant, just to give you an example of the how a state government grant works. So this one's for Victoria. It's only come up in the system because we put in a Victorian postcode. So you'll notice this one is only available to businesses employing 1 to 199 employees. This business, we said there were 18. You can look at the funding details. You can go into the grant toolkit and read the material which we've prepared on how this grant works. And we can have a look at the questions. So let's answer these. Is the applicant a Victorian-based company employing less than 200, which wishes to utilise the business R&D voucher to contract Victorian-based service providers to undertake R&D activities? We say yes. Has the applicant a voucher? So you get the voucher through their government departments there, so we say yes. And what that is now going to do is to now what that's obviously highlighted there is the correct answer to that question was no, because if you had a technology voucher, this is not the appropriate scheme to claim under with the Victorians. So it is answered ineligible. So if we went back to the results now, we've got now under potentially ineligible this one grant which we've identified. If we said, oh no, we answered that the wrong way, and we went back to it, and we changed that answer to no, the system will now say that you're eligible. And when we go back to results, potentially ineligible, there's nothing there, but under potentially eligible, that other grant should be there. So that's illustrating the need to be closely reading those questions to make sure that the questions have been answered properly. So what we might move on to is the report, because it takes a while to go through all these, as you can see. So we'll now go to the report. This is the report that would come out then with the name of your client in the top, Eastern Seal Fabrication Proprietary Limited. So there's the name. Your name, it would not come up as ESS BizTools, it would come up as the name of your firm. And what you've then got is a summary of the grants that we've identified, together with the funding details that you could make available to your client. There is a disclaimer on the bottom. In version 2, the disclaimer has been drafted in such a way as it will also include your firm name. It's a summary of the grant, and then you could give your client this report to tell them that these are the grants that you have identified, and then get their approval to proceed with undertaking a work for them, that you're going to bill them for assisting them in the grant application. So that's how ESS BizGrants works in an overall basis. I'll just check whether we have any questions. I have been checking. I haven't seen any. If you have some questions or thoughts that you'd like to ask us, please send us an email at peter@essbiztools.com.au. When version 2 is released, we will be organising a special training webinar for our subscribers to ESS BizGrants, so you can very quickly become familiar with the enhancements that are going to be included in version 2. So thank you very much for participating today, and thank you for your support of ESS BizGrants. Thank you, and have a wonderful day. Goodbye.